everybody. Welcome back. It is Wireheads. We are on episode number 46. If you are just joining us on YouTube on this part of the episode, for you guys in particular, down below, there is a little link in the description that will take you to Diamond's half of today's episode. On hers, we covered what currencies exist in Night City beyond the Eddy, talking about a little bit like alternative currency, debts, how they're handled, both on the player side and the NPC side, and kind of discussing kind of what that should look like, and getting some really interesting kind of looks at that and discussion around that. This half of the episode, we are going to be talking about something that is, it's a thing that people have opinions on. And so, much like most people, I have an opinion. And it's going to be a fun little dive. Before we dive in, for those of you who are new here, hello, my name is Emmerron, sometimes content creator and most of the time pro GM that runs Cyberpunk Red near endlessly. And of course, joining me, as always, is my co-host.
Hi everybody, I'm Diamond Dust, net runner on the internet. I'm a Twitch streamer. I do stuff on YouTube, and also I am a professional GM as well. And beautiful. Every Thursday afternoon, I'm out here hanging with my best friend, so great time. But yes. Opinions, where do you get those?
In general, through a lot of poorly informed people spouting the same one over and over and either agreeing or disagreeing with it. I throw a little shade.
Is that
you? I throw a little shade, only a little. And this is because my half of today's episode is one that I'm sure will not get me canceled in any way, shape, or form. And that is, what is overpowered? And this is a little bit like asking, what is life? You know, what does it mean to be a human? It's like a very philosophical sort of question that I am not a game designer by trade. I write every now and then. I am, a gig creator in that way, but I typically leave the underpinnings of those things to other people who are far better educated. I have some opinions on them, but as I've just gotten done saying, that doesn't mean that they're valuable. Not always, at least. And I've dabbled in being a playtester. I've got credits in a couple Artel books now that I'm very proud of. But that does not make me a designer. This does not equate me to the people who are doing the hard work of cultivating those ideas who start with them. So before we discuss any part of this, let me just say right up front, I'm not a game designer. I cannot pretend I am a game designer. I am someone who enjoys the design of this game in particular, and who I would like to think has spent enough time with it to give an honest take that does not run afoul of, at least not entirely afoul of, the kind of thought around the game and its design. So with that in mind, as I say all of that, let's start talking about why I want to talk about what's overpowered. So,
and
please.
So just as a note, I am starting to dabble in learning how to do game design. I am no expert in game design. I am simply learning from those that do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's how you learn any skill, honestly.
I have no authority to speak on game design. But I suppose as game masters, we do have some experience under our belts. Yeah. So
yeah, this is going to be less a discussion about what would we design differently, and more of a discussion on what qualifies anything as overpowered. And more often, this is going to kind of bury the lead a little bit here, but I don't think anything in Cyberpunk Red is overpowered. That is my full stop thesis for my side of today's episode. Nothing in this game is overpowered. Nothing is overpowered. there are things that are very powerful. There are things that are far and away better than other things, but there are reasons why those are not therefore overpowered. So I suppose let's start by looking at some commonly held examples of things that are overpowered, right? We could look at martial arts, right? A lot of people, especially with the release of Cyber Fists of Fury, which we covered last week, I do believe, on our episode.
Yes.
It's all blurring together after the week we've had. But with that article releasing, a lot of people were quick to claim there were certain martial arts or certain skills that martial arts within that book had access to that were overpowered. They should just be banned at the table. They shouldn't be allowed to be used, or this, that, or the other thing, restricting them or limiting their use beyond a certain point. And I will say, that is your prerogative as a GM for your table to determine what is or isn't allowed there. My counterpoint to you, however, is why are you banning them? Why not just use them against your players? No rule exists that says your players are the only ones who access these things. You have to play even with them if you really want to. And I would argue that if they are a practitioner of a martial art, they have more reasons to be opposed by other practitioners of martial arts because they are in that community. That is a niche community within the real world. It is very likely a niche community within the game world as well. And if you're in it, you were probably known in it. So that's kind of a lot of what we're going to talk about today is very like, hey, why not just use it yourself as the GM against them? But yeah, Diamond, if you have commentary on that.
I know you gave your thesis statement, and like for me, just as kind of a statement that I have always that I've kind of come to during these past few years playing Cyberpunk and a few other games. What really defines overpowered is it is the obvious, easiest way forward, where there are no other solutions besides this specific build. In Cyberpunk Red, there are many different ways to get to the same solution. Linear frame martial arts just happens to be an effective way in some case.
Yeah.
But so is auto fire.
Yep.
So is heavy weapons.
Yep.
So is shotgun.
And to go a step beyond that even, you don't need to even rely on combat exactly to go through things. You can be, like, we have a fixer in one of the games I'm running, the Diamond's part of actually, who has literally talked his way into burning down a building before, and he didn't have a single gun on him. Like, that is what a social person can do. They just convince other people to do what they want, and then the things happen. Building go boom. So I have a really hard time when people in the community start to claim this is overpowered, because I have literally beaten my solo at the table, who was in martial arts, linear frame solo. I've beaten him, his character, within an inch of their life, and only let them get away because I felt like proving the point and being merciful about it. Where it's like, okay, you have been checked. Congratulations. Here you are. You are nearly dead. And he was upset with it because it's like, no, this is the build that shouldn't lose. Or I should have, you should have told me this, that, or the other thing. And some of it, maybe there were ways I could have handled the specific context around when this happened better. But the bottom line is, I could stop him with not even that exotic of an NPC. I just threw Arasaka assassins against him that I like bumped the skill bases on a little bit. And all of a sudden, it's like, that's enough. That was enough to stop the best build in the game by some people's metric. Despite my whole party being able to dodge bullets, they had access to some high-powered tech. They had access to like one of the strongest builds in the game for a solo, and they still lost that encounter. Like, it's doable. It's extremely doable. And Like it's Societal Danger in chat here is bringing up anything they can do, you can do with an unlimited budget. Exactly. Like I don't have to worry about how many eddies I have left in my bank account at the end of the month, because if I'm the corporation, gang, etc., running against the players, my budget is bottomless at the end of the day as far as what matters, right? Like I've talked on my channel about like you want to keep the level to which this happens realistic, obviously, where you're like, okay, if it's a booster gang, they're probably not bringing out like every one of them having a Perseus and like light metal gear or anything like that. But like if they're a corporation, they might. And even those booster gangers, they might have a pocket set of that ready to go in case a what we would call an Avengers level threat pops up and they need to take it out. Like they could do that. There's nothing saying that they can't. So yeah, like my whole thing with powers is throw it back against the players. If they think that X is overpowered, show them exactly how powerful they are when they use it. Don't limit them. Just let them take their pick. And when they pick, if they start getting too good at running over your mooks with it, throw it back against them. Do the literal there's like an old, I think it was Looney Tunes, where like they had a row of like tubes that they lined up, and a shotgun blast would go in one and just loop back out and fire back in their face. Just do that. Just dunk, dunk, dunk. Okay, cool. Here you go. Have fun. I don't know, like when you've started running into problems that you were struggling to contain at your table, Diamond, what have you done, I guess, to check that?
So, for me, that monster for a time was tech. Tech was that monster. Because I didn't realize exactly, how much, bargaining power I had as a GM when it came to certain things. And it was very much like, hey GM, I have everything to meet this. It's great. And I'm thinking, great, you made that. And I was just like, there's no way that anybody else could have this thing. Actually, they could.
Yes.
And then one of my texts was just like, hey GM, what the fuck? That's my specific thing. And it's like,
no, it's not.
Where did you store it? Well, it's on my agent.
What else is connected to your agent?
It's like, what's your agent connected to? Well, I mean, I use it to control this, control this, and control this. Yeah, so it's connected to your home net architecture. Well, yeah. Oh, and then it dawned on them.
Yep.
The corporation can make it now.
Yep.
Congratulations. Thanks for cutting out, thanks for, cutting out half the work for constitutional arms. Anyway, my turn with the gun now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've done this before where like my players maybe didn't even fully finish the project yet, and someone got the intel ahead of them on like, oh, you've developed this. Very good. This is ours now. This is our product now. And it was like to the point that like I did this to Maya once. She's not forgiven me for it. Where she's like, oh yeah, like I'm developing this gun, and I'm like, that's so cool. So is Faisal over here actually. And she's like, Faisal's doing what? I'm sorry. And he got all the credit for making the thing that she actually made. So yeah. It's like I do that all the time to my players when it comes to something that I'm like, is that a little too good? Well, if I start thinking like it might be, some other corp saw them using it. They had enough intel and information to start drafting up ideas.
Look,
their techs figured it out in half the time. So have fun with that.
You can only use the mook fucker upper 5,000 so many times before someone notices. Yes, that's what the tech ended up calling it. Partially to spite me, partially because they thought it was funny. I'm like, okay, all right. basically double barrel shotgun that fired both at once. They had the body to shoot it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, well, that's gonna be 10. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna fire the shotgun at you. It looks oddly familiar. Why? Well, that's 10d6 damage. What? That's 10d6 damage. But GM, that's my gun. It was your gun. Once techs learn, once you learn that, you know, tech's inventions and the things that techs make aren't proprietary.
Yeah.
It changed that whole sphere for me, that techs have become a lot more cautious at my table about what they make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the last season of Neon Inferno, obviously, like the drug tech in my party, watch what happened the moment his recipe got mixed up into a corp, and they're like, ooh, that sounds like a good weapon. We're going to use it. And all of a sudden, they weaponized it against him and the neighborhood he was part of. And, like, that's what happens when you decide to do bioterrorism around the enemies that come toward you. Like, throw up the grenade. Awesome. Very cool. People are going to remember that blue smoke. The ones who got away, or the ones who saw it off in the distance, they're going to remember that. They're going to want to figure out why that's blue. They're going to want to figure out what the heck happened there that caused everyone in that room to go insane. Once they do, big yikes, you're in trouble. So yeah, that is one of those things where, like, tech inventions are not overpowered because you can do exactly that. There was no patent law in Night City.
Of course, you have the ability to veto if you feel that, you know, something's getting out of hand.
Yeah. Or if you're like, the reason I would fully veto something, and I've never, ever had to do this in Cyberpunk. The reason which I would use to veto something would be based entirely upon the idea that, if I were to use this item in reverse toward you, it would break the game in such a way that you would not find that experience fun. And consequently, you using it against my mooks all the time is not going to be fun for me, right? Like, if that is the truth of it, right, where it's like the two-way transaction that we have at the table, where I'm presenting you a challenge and I expect you to be challenged by it, if we are not upholding that and it's instead turned into, this is, for context, brief tangent, this is my problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! The trading card game, is the game has turned into, after years and years and years and years of it being developed, most games being decided by the first or second turn, right? Because you either build out a whole board that can't be stopped, or you fail to, and then your opponent does the same thing back against you. And 1 to 2 turns after that happens, everything's done if it's not done that turn. So, like, in Cyberpunk, the only reason I'd veto something is if I could see that problem with it on the horizon. Because nothing in the game right now settles a conflict in one shot for the most part. Like, not without some extreme luck and stuff also coming into play, like headshots and things like that. Like, there are ways to make it happen, but they are not ways that typically get employed commonly or by everybody in the city. And so it's therefore okay to be kind of like, okay, there are 1 or 2 niche ways this could work that would do this thing, but that is the nuclear option. We forget about that for the most part. We leave that off until things get really dire or a corporation is really pissed off. And then we'll open that cabinet up and we'll see what's inside and what is the most appropriate for what we're dealing with, right? But there's a spectrum of escalation there. And I feel like even well before this point, where you've got that cabinet of nuclear options, you've got plenty of stuff on this part of the spectrum that I feel like most people just don't take advantage of. For example, another really great example. Do your party members have cyberware, like nasal filters, for just as an example? Do you not like that they can ignore your smoke like that? Well, I've got a couple of solutions for you. Thing 1, the microwaver, tech upgraded, so that the attacker can choose which cyberware they're disabling. Thing 2, you can, like Blue kind of uncovered, tech upgrade osmosis compound. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. Do they have skin? Is all of that skin covered? No? Good. They're affected. Just like they would be if they had inhaled it.
Well, also on top of that, and this is a very, very minor spoiler. It is very much a mechanical spoiler for Hope Reborn. Your nasal filters or your anti-smog mask can and will be overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. It will not stop everything.
Yep.
If you are in a very, very dense cloud of that, like if you are like in a very dense cloud of smoke, you will have to deal with smoke inhalation.
Yep.
Like,
they're not an oxygen mask. They are entirely to filter the stuff that isn't breathable from the oxygen that is. And if there's too much of the other stuff, they're not going to fulfill their job, basically. If they've oversaturated, you're just as screwed as you were without them.
I'm trying to think what other you know what? How about the big E?
I was waiting for us to talk about it. Yeah.
Because I thought it was mentioned here. Please do not riot. I know we're talking about it. Don't riot. Oh, evasion.
Evasion.
A tale as old as time.
Yep. Let's talk about it. How do we defeat evasion? High evasion spec.
I have always... one of my favorite things about TTRPGs. Sure, you have a high evasion spec, but Murphy's Law kicks in for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And when it does kick in, I've always had it happen at probably the best times as well. I had one solo that was very much, high body, high reflex, high evasion, and they like to throw grenades as well. So they were a real problematic one for like me to add anything with SP lower than 11 onto the field. And it's just like, well, you are aware of the sniper that's shooting at you. Like, okay, well, I roll evasion. They rolled a 1, and then they rolled a 10. I hit, pop their head.
Yep.
And I roll 3 6s. So we get to go draw a card.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I put that solo in the dirt in one round. It was like, look, I'm not actively bloodthirsty, but like every once in a while when you finally get that one edge runner that just like is
they assume 18 evasion is they assume 18 evasion's panacea, and it's not.
Yeah, it will catch you.
Yeah.
Also on top of that, of course, I hope your perception's high enough.
Yeah. Which, if you've dumped int, it won't be. And that's the thing. You get to a place where the mathematical balance of a high reflex, high dexterity, high body, relatively, I mean, not even relatively, fairly high will as well, right? Because like if we're talking optimal configurations, right? We have 62 points, right? So on this solo, this theoretical solo that we're building that has all of these things, right? 8 reflex, 8 dex, 8 will, 7 body because the math is no different and you can upgrade this later, right? On that alone, we've spent 8, 16, 24, 31. We've spent half of our stat points in 4 of our 10 stats already. Just on that. And then the move, when you add that on top of that, that's another 8. Cool. So now you're at 39 of your 62. Like... And you've got nothing backing you up in any of these, really, outside of your combat.
Yeah, that leaves you 23 points you need to divvy up between luck. Well, then, of course, you got to take, 2 away for int, 2 away for cool, 2 away for tech. 2 away for luck, and 2 away for empathy. That leaves you 13 points.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you need empathy, so you can install all that cyberware.
Yeah.
So let's say 6 empathy. That leaves you 7 points.
To divvy across, what is that? 4 remaining stats? Like
4 stats.
you're gonna get maybe one more of those up to like middling. And that's about it. Like, so you're gonna be the most unintelligent, socially inept, like technically uneducated edge runners in the business. Like the moment I
don't know.
Yeah, the moment I throw a threat against you, that is a wall that you need to tear apart. Like, unless you're able to shoot through that wall without it shooting back at you, you are gonna be in trouble. And I guarantee you, there will be walls that will shoot back at you because they don't care. They are machines, and there are 7 turrets embedded in that.
And of course, while those turrets while the netrunners will try to deal with those turrets, you're probably dealing with a bunch of other problems as well.
Yeah.
That you need, and if you don't have a tech or a fixer to compensate for, you're a little screwed. So, on the matter of evasion only works well when you decide to fully spec for it. But after a while, people will notice you aren't aware of your surroundings. You're only aware of the fight in front of you. You will get caught off guard.
Yep.
Don't question your GM as soon as a sneak attack happens.
Yep.
If they ask for a perception check. So that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Yeah, stealth snipers are really powerful against evasion tanks, because the thing is, the moment you're all in evasion, especially if you have low perception, you are literally just asking to get your head opened up by a sniper. Like that is all that's going to happen from there. And the moment you lose track of that sniper again, yes, there is a sniper. Do you know what direction they're coming from if they reorient themselves hundreds of meters away from you? I don't know. Kind of sounds like you might not.
I suppose one of the other ways I have also dealt with evasion tanks, numbers.
Yeah.
I know, throwing multiple mooks out onto the field it can kind of slow down the turn order a little bit, but they know that, G.I. Dunno is on his way to come fuck them up. So they call in their buddies, who call in their buddies. And suddenly now, it's U5 against like 15 of them.
Yep. Well, and now...
hopefully you can dodge enough.
Well, and I think, ironically, a tool that we just got in, or will be getting for everyone who doesn't have early access to it like we did yesterday. But in the Elfline's Magic Returns document, we now know there are gonks, right? That is a special class of enemy that have 1 HP. They have 1 HP, and if you can bleed armor across their armor into that 1 HP, they are dead. So you can now field 15 mooks at once and not have it hurt, right? Like the video that I'm going to release talking about combat balance and playing fair doesn't account for their presence, because that was kind of my rule before that, is if you have to roll like a full-bodied mook, I would go +2 and no more in terms of bodies on the ground, right? Like, so you have to scale up each one's individual challenge rating a little bit to be like, okay, this, like, we got multiple lieutenants on the battlefield or something, if you want to go more than +2 in strength on your players, right? But that is something where, like, with the mooks, or not mooks, with the gonks that are now going to be a thing, you can design a bunch of enemies that are literal chaff that you throw at your party. You throw them at the guy who has the biggest HP pool or thinks that they're the toughest guy in the room, and you watch as they slowly bleed under the weight of gonk after gonk after gonk, who are dying, but that guy is on their way out as soon as they're done, you know?
Well, yeah, and I mean, even then, we also get trash mobs as well in Hope Reborn. So
yeah,
like you can do that.
Yeah.
Also, like on top of that, oh gosh. Okay, never mind. I lost my thought where I was going with that, but at the end of the day, evasion can only save you from so much.
Yeah. And Jay Gray has suggested this one a couple times, and I don't think this is at all an inappropriate way of handling it, as long as your players agree from the get-go that this is a rule that you all would be using, is to apply a cumulative penalty to evading multiple times in a single round. Because you get to the point of, 3 or 4 evasions within a 3-second span. Yeah, that's a lot. James Hutt disagrees with that, by the way. We saw that on Mayor's Desk recently, because Rob brought it up to him. And Jay, I know, has echoed that you could do that. And James like, I just think it's cool that you could dodge bullets like Neo, so I'm not going to nerf my player's ability to do that, because the reality is that if I throw a sufficiently large enough enemy at them who has a better skill base than they do, or if I sneak around and shoot them from an angle they weren't expecting, lo and behold, they will die. Like, I don't need to worry about them dodging the bullets they can see, because they still can't dodge the ones that they cannot see. So, like, what do I care? The 10% failure chance expands the more attacks that there are swinging at you. Yeah. It's very true, Racer. Yeah. The more bullets coming down range your way, the further you have to hope that 10% doesn't express itself. Because the moment that does is the moment you're feeling the hurt. And then suddenly you're seriously wounded. Now your evasion counts for 2 less than it did before. And, God forbid they hit you with something that nerfs it even further, right? Say they hit you with something like smoke that makes it hard to see the things coming at you. So now you're evading at a -4 because you're not able to get a good idea, right? Like, all of that comes into play. All of that can stack up against you really, really fast. So, like, evasion's not as the boogeyman that most people think it is. They just aren't playing dirty enough with their players when it comes to that stuff. Like, if you fight dirty, you will find more often than not. And Cyberpunk is a world that fights dirty. So, like, that is not a thing to be, ashamed of doing or feel like embarrassed about doing. Do it. Play dirty with your players when it comes to, like, getting them into traps, ambushing them. Put your characters that you're opposing them with in positions that exploit their weaknesses. Like, really make them feel the hurt, humble them, and they will then respect the world a little more the next time they either have to roll a new character, or with the character that got out of it by the skin of their teeth, they are going to look at that game a little differently from that point forward. They're not going to assume that just because they have a high evasion, they can do stuff. They're going to start putting IP into other little skills like acting. Acting's a meme at my table because I call for it more often than I ever thought I would when I was new to things. Because, like, you need to deceive someone that you belong there. Acting check. That is our deceptions. You can act the part that you look like you belong, right? Can you walk with confidence? Can you speak enough jargon that sounds like it belongs to make it appear as though you do? If you could do those things adeptly, great. There you go. You're through the door. On your way to whatever thing you were just breaking into. If you can't, though, well, they're going to call security, and security is going to call the police, and the police are going to call the bigger police. and suddenly you have a big problem. That gun isn't going to get you anywhere forever.
I suppose another one, and I guess I have been learning, and I'm still trying to get past this one. Money hoarders. They have money. They somehow always have it. How do you crack that piggy bank?
Money is not overpowered either. Money is not overpowered either.
No, it's not.
And the reason, so the way I get around players hoarding money, one is to afford them less of it at once. I've gotten much better about that in more recent days of giving them more often. They'll get 1,000 Eddie gigs than 2,000, right? So if you're giving them lesser paid gigs, or you pay part of that gig out in goods rather than money, that is a massive way to avoid that problem up front. If you've already got that problem though, give them something personal that costs a lot that they might feel obligated to spend the money on. For example, does your player have any loved ones in prison? Well, bail is 20,000 eddies. That's why they haven't been out of there. But if you can drop 20 grand, they can go walk free.
Are you keeping a cyber pets? That is another way that, like, you know, then you gotta sell them on the idea of they should have a cyber pet.
Well,
who doesn't want one?
Yeah, I mean, and cyber pets are a good money sink. I will say that is like, if you have nothing better to spend it on, honestly, why not? You know, like that is an honest question. Is like, if you have the relative income to like constantly be able to afford that, why not? Like, get yourself a little, cyber chinchilla, you know, that's cool. But it's something where like money can go a certain level of, can get you pretty far. I've found in more recent campaigns that I've run, especially since Neon Inferno Season 2 wrapped up, most of my games, no one has above like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 eddies at the most at any one time. And then that usually gets burned off in one big purchase when they decide to buy a linear frame or something like that. So they're usually they are only saving it until the next night market. And the moment that night market comes along with a bunch of goodies that they really wanted, sure, they get to like expand their power then with that money. But like, nothing says that the money they've gained thus far, we used to say this, for those of you who don't know, I was in the life before being content creator, a licensed stockbroker for a time. And there was a disclaimer, and maybe some of you have heard it if you've dabbled at all in investing, that we used to have to tell people a lot of the time whenever we were talking about the past, right? Past performance does not indicate future return. In other words, just because line went up last year does not mean that this year line continues to go up. It could go down. And so just because you earned a bunch of eddies at one point, because you did a really big gig and got away with it, that doesn't mean that those eddies are going to always be there. Doesn't mean that that level of income is always going to be there for your character. It is an up and a down. So like maybe you hit a particularly dry spell one month. Whoopsie. Now you're poor again. Congratulations. You have a fancy linear frame, or maybe you went as far as to Borg all the way out. Congratulations. You did that. Now you're poor again. Make the money back. Can you?
And then again, also, like, on top of that, like, if someone's got the lifestyle to meet it, how do you nickel and dime them? How do you do it?
I mean, one is to let the gigs dry up underneath of them. If they've done something that would justify gigs drying up, give them like 3 weeks of downtime. And then they'll look at the first time you do this, they will say, oh my God, I have 3 weeks of downtime. That's so much time for activities. I can do so much in that time to like settle scores or whatever. They're going to love it, right? That first time they get 3 weeks of downtime, They're going to look at that like it was a gift, right? But then they're going to realize, oh, but you know, like that's a little bit shit because like my, you know, so sure, like I went out and I bought this nice linear frame, I you know, or maybe I, you know, for some reason decided
subdermal armor.
I was going to go a little less functional and more style with it, where it's, oh, I super chromed all of my cyber limbs. Like, awesome. Great. You've got golden limbs now. You look gaudy as hell and more like a target than a, you know, an edge runner. But congrats. Like, oh, I did all of this in my 3 weeks time, but I haven't earned a single eddy. Or maybe I have hustled a little bit, but I've only earned maybe like 400 or 500 eddies. Rent is coming due, and I'm like, I can afford it for this month, but if another month like this happens, I won't be able to afford rent again. And then the next month comes around, you're like, okay, cool, yeah, well, so here's a gig after that 3 weeks of downtime. The gig pays you 1,000. Like, oh, okay, good. Okay, I'll have some money now. Awesome. So that's enough for me to maybe afford rent next month too if I do a couple hustles. Like, but they're not going to think about that next month's rent yet. They're going to think, oh, okay, well, I've got some money now. So they're going to spend a little bit of that probably then on ammo or whatever. And then the next month rolls around. Well, you have 2 weeks of downtime. And suddenly this is going to start looking at them like, oh. And at the end of that, you have another 1,000 eddy gig. And you have 2 more weeks of downtime. And the day before rent's due is when the next gig's going to happen. So now you have time pressure to make the money, pay your rent. Do you have, you know, what kind of a job are you going to look for? Well, it's a dangerous one. It's going to be 2,000 eddies. And it's going to just let me afford rent. I won't be able to buy like almost anything else. Something goes wrong in that gig, I am fucked. But I need it. Now I'm desperate. That is how you bleed them out. You just use downtime. Downtime is such a money sink, and most people don't take it to be the money sink that it is. They think that it's the thing that gives them the agency to do whatever they want. And it is, but it also is, it's downtime that you're not working, right? That's, you're not earning money mostly. Hustle. But you'll earn all of, I think like the highest ranks earn maybe 600 or 700 eddies for their hustles. They're not money makers, not in the way that you need at that point. They're like maintenance pocket money.
Oh, okay. All right. You know, I'll keep that in mind, especially for Red Genesis. Have fun, friends.
Yeah. It's like if you pissed off the wrong people, especially and you need to lay low a ton. Oh my God. That's one of my favorite things to use, actually. You do a 2,000 eddy gig and maybe even you earned a bonus, right? Like you walked in, you did 2,000 eddies, you know, was the higher rate. You walked in, you not only took out your target, right? Or stole the thing you were meant to steal. You got something extra out of it, right? Like maybe you stole someone's ID that you know if cloned could give someone access to the building again. Or maybe you picked up some experimental new weapon that is going to follow you like a curse. Ask me how I know. But the bottom line is, whatever that bonus was that conveniently fell into your lap, that is going to become a curse. Because now, even if you've taken nothing but the money from the gig, you probably pissed off someone really powerful doing that gig. And that means you might need to lay low for a little while. You need to burn off some of that bad rep, some of that identifiableness, let things simmer. And if you do that, you're not earning money in that time frame. So like, that's all you really need is like piss the wrong people off once and watch as either you lay low and earn no money, or the game gets progressively harder for you as they continue throwing agents against you. And you need to deal with them constantly and therefore get paranoid. And that involves buying security for your house, moving to a better neighborhood. All of these things cost money. None of them are free. So yeah, that's how you beat bankrollers. Congrats, you've learned the trade secret.
All right. Now, what other overpowered XYZ? Chat, do we have any other overpowered XYZs that you can think of?
Try me, chat. I will equalize you on this. I will show you how the thing you are claiming is overpowered is not.
Ooh, let's see. Well, the socializers, me personally.
Oh, LCC, really quick, just so he can cultivate ideas. We've talked about evasion. I've talked about martial arts solos and why that's not as powerful as you think it is. We've talked about tech invention. And then, yeah, we just finished talking about bankrollers. Someone who saves up all their money and doesn't spend much of it, and how you can bust that. Humanity loss, the new humanity loss rules are also a great way to bust those. Like, if they're not spending money, that means they're living in shitty conditions, and there's all kinds of ways they lose humanity in shitty conditions. So there's an equal amount of damage you do to their humanity if they aren't spending their money. So it helps encourage them not to do that. That is one other thing that I failed to mention. But yeah, that's another way to look at that. Now, yes, go ahead.
Of course, you got the socializers who, maybe they've got the numbers to really, make a persuasive argument or know how to bribe people. Bribes, of course, that also digs into the bankrollers as well. You gotta have what people want.
Yep.
And you're not always gonna know what they want.
And not everyone wants money.
But then again, also at my table, and I know there's some mixed opinions about this one, but you can't just throw dice at it and make the problem go away at my table. You have to, explain to me the argument. You gotta give me, how you're going to persuade this person. What are you bribing them with?
Right. You have to basically stand a reasonable... You have to stand a reasonable chance of solving it before the dice ever get thrown.
Because, and of course, just the people that throw dice at it to make the problem go away, where they're not, really getting into, character and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, you threw dice. I don't know what you're trying to convince me of.
No, and that's one of those things where, before the dice ever get thrown, that the way, even for lower level role players, where they're because I was that way once too. I know what that's like. And I will say, those of you who might be listening to us that are new to the hobby, or even just Cyberpunk itself, you're coming from a more fantasy background, and things like role playing the scenario or the world is intimidating for you. I understand. I've been where you are. I was there for a long time. The thing to think about is not so much what words are you using, it's what information are you conveying, right? I would always be okay if someone just said, yeah, so I want to try and convince them that what they're doing is a bad idea, and I'm going to try and convince them by telling them about this other group we just took out, right? That conveys all the information I need to know contextually to get a vibe of what your players actually, what your player character is saying. Yeah,
and Jesus, what's the sentiment? Yeah, people that are new to my table. I guess the way I said it did kind of sound a little rough. This is not me knocking new players or people that are low role players, but I'm talking about John Numbersmith. Okay, John Numbersmith. That is just all right, GM. I've got a 16. That's a 9. So there you go. I'm well, that's a great roll you made there. I didn't call for one. What are you trying to do with your persuasion? Yeah. That's the kind of those are the kinds of players that it's just as the quote unquote socializer. Don't throw dice at me and expect something to happen.
Yeah,
that's not how you win as a socializer.
The only tabletop game where I've known throw dice and something can happen to work in the in that absent sort of of any context moment and even this has some restriction where this is concerned, but it's one I just showed you the other night, which is 10 candles. Like you roll dice to literally tell what happens next, basically, to keep storytelling rights. But like the moment that you fail that roll, the GM can just come in and start saying what the story then becomes. You extinguish another candle. And the thing in that game is no one wins. At the end of it, everybody dies. There is no winning 10 candles. There is just all of you die. How do you die? What story do you tell on the way out, kind of thing. And so it's like, if you want a game like that, understand that there will be caveats to that. As in, like, there will be a game that you play where either you do not win, or where winning is not so easily defined as just winning high die rolls. It does not work that way.
Like 10 candles isn't really a game of winning and losing. It's more telling.
You're telling a story.
Yeah, telling a story, and the dice just determine who gets to have what happen.
Well, and I would argue all tabletop games are roughly can roughly fit that same mold. When we play a tabletop game, whether it's Cyberpunk or Dragonbane or even Dungeons and Dragons, what we're really after is not winning and losing as a concept. We're after, was the story worth it, right? Like, you can accrue all the gold or eddies or weapons or spells or whatever other thing you're trying to collect and grow your power through. Like, you can get all that you ever want, right? At the end of the game, what you're looking for isn't that, it is the story. Like, when I go back and think of my first D&D campaign that I played through and that I was the GM for, the thing that kicked me off on all of this, when we got to the end of that, I don't really remember what my players had on them equipment-wise. All I remember is my brother had like 4 resurrection options at the final boss, and I made him give up 2 of them to solve a mechanic. And that was literally like, beyond that though, I don't remember what they came from. I think one was because he was a paladin, and the other was maybe an amulet, but that's about as close as I get, right? Everything beyond that is, we remember the story of what happened after, right? As we had to rewrite the world because it had been destroyed by this war they had participated in. They had to literally rebuild the pantheon of gods. Like, they became the new arbiters of creation. And that was the way that we summed that game up. And it was a game full of stories like that are like so memorable for us. We don't remember what any of us was wearing. I might remember the errant spell I cast here or there to like keep an enemy wave at bay or something. But like, you're going to remember the stories. So don't ever take like, I roll an item or I roll a, like this skill, that skill, whatever. Those rolls don't matter at the end of the day unless they're telling an interesting story. And if they're not, then the roll probably won't get called for by your GM. To GMs out there, I highly encourage you to set that as a table rule, that unless you have called for a check or someone has requested to make one and given you the option to say yes or no, that your players will not just roll random dice for the most part. Unless they're maybe, because like the one niche exception to this is some of my players at my tables say, hey, I'm just going to roll a dice really quick because I don't know which of 2 options. Basically, they're flipping a coin for themselves to decide which way they want to go because they can't make up their mind. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. But don't expect you to roll persuasion. Just say, yeah, so I'm rolling persuasion, GM. And for me to take that without having been like informed or myself asking for it, like for me to give you anything off of that roll. Because it's like, there's not a lot that'll get you unless like there's a context behind it, right? So, I roll persuasion. What'd you say? Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to avoid.
Yeah. And then, of course, I'll tell you what's overpowered. I'll tell you what's really fucking overpowered is metagaming. All right, metagaming. Mm-hmm. But you want to know how you beat metagamers? Flip the script, change it, turn those numbers around, and as soon as they just be like, well, why are they rolling? Why is this goblin rolling at like plus 10 for this? And it's like, you encountered the wrong camp.
Oh, you didn't notice? These guys are bigger. a little less green, a little more red. Oh, yeah, they're not the goblins you fought before. Yeah, these are a little different. They worship a different god. And they're going to probably crush you now because you've underestimated them. Congratulations. Yeah. There's a reality to that, though. And there's a lot of stat blocks in red now with Danger Galdacier being in the game, but, like, you can modify those stat blocks so easily.
Yeah. Or it's just like, well, why is this booster ganger shooting at plus 16 to hit? And it's just like, you're dealing with, like, a veteran from 6th Street, my friend. Like, I don't know what you want. This guy's been through the ringer.
Yeah. Like,
so, yeah.
Yeah, metagamers in Cyberpunk is not the game to try and do that in ever, because like I can't tell you how few of the templates I've used as is overall in my games. Like every now and then I'll do that, but like it's usually in the low stakes encounters. If it's not a low stakes encounter, I'm not using a set stat block. I might have started with one, but I've changed it. I promise you. It is not the same stat block that you read if you did read ahead. And if you try to call me out on it, that is the quickest way to not get invited back to my table for the most part. Because I don't like people ruining the fun of other people. And to me, that's like you're spoiling yourself and possibly the rest of the table by doing a thing a particular way. Only because you know what's coming, right? And even like, you know, like I'm not opposed to people playing at my table who know the gigs. Like Diamond has played at my table plenty, running gigs that she's run before, many times.
I barely fucking remember some of these though. I'm just like, oh, right.
To her benefit, she has the memory of a goldfish, so it helps. But I'm just kidding.
Well, I have an encyclopedic memory for gear.
Yeah, and I have it for stories. So for me, I can remember
backstories, not numbers. I don't remember stats that well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like for stats, I don't remember much, but I do for the story structure and stuff. That stuff is like I love lore. So for me, that's where I have the encyclopedic knowledge. I could tell you what beats were in a gig, almost verbatim.
Me playing through Tales of Red Street stories, it's just like I'm walking through a haze of like, oh yeah, that. I remember this. I don't remember that, and I don't remember that thing down in the tunnel until it happened, and I'm like, oh, right, that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know that.
It's so much fun too because sometimes I'll throw a curveball at her that I've created, and then she's like, "Wait a minute, I don't remember this." I'm like, "Well, it's in the gig," and she says, "You what?"
I'm just like,
so fun.
Because, like, my last Cyberpunk, IRL Cyberpunk, or quote-unquote IRL, it was IRL and then VTT because of the plague. We did street stories, and some of the shit... Then after the matter, apparently it wasn't in the gig, and I was just being screwed with a little.
Yeah, and I had fun. with that. So LCC brings up here... to be honest, I feel like a lot of what people see as OP in the game is due to inattentive GMs. They don't use tactical, smart, or interesting encounters. Just let the lowest common denominator solve them. There's no puzzle, combat tactic, or objective that they need to overcome that requires more brain power than I roll the thing, I put all the points into, do I win? Yes, that is a element. I don't think that that's the whole story. But I definitely think that that's a sizable part of it. Like it's enough that that's kind of why I'm like, if you just mess with your players even a little bit, right? Like all you need is a single stealth sniper or someone who can match them blow for blow. And the thing is, especially if the enemy to player matchup you're doing for this is a solo versus a solo with similar capabilities, and all they're doing is going at each other and not attacking the parties around them. Like, if they have their one-on-one confrontation while the rest of the party deals with other stuff, in Cyberpunk, that's a far easier thing to do than in other games that I've run, in my opinion. Because a lot of the time what that then amounts to for me is it turns into they're having one conflict while the rest of the party is wrapped up in the larger conflict, because the solo knows if they stop attacking that enemy, they're turning on the rest of the party, who is not nearly as well prepared as they are for this sort of encounter, and they will all get crushed, and then the solo's alone against the mobs. Meanwhile, if the mobs go for the solo, they know the party is going to mop them up. So it turns into this, we play a little bit of Cold War with the different factions in a conflict there, where they're happening at the same time, sure, but unless there's a good reason not to target the thing that's kind of designed for you, you just will target the thing that's designed for you. Because it is smart to do that if you are playing that common denominator stuff. Because it is very like, it does boil down pretty nicely that way, even if you're not playing sneaky combat tactics. The moment you do have them, though, you should play them. Don't, like I said earlier, do not be afraid of playing dirty against your players. They will do it to you at times, and we're not the enemy either way. Obviously, like being a GM is not the same as being an opponent in a game. You play their opponents. You are not their opponent, though, as the GM. Your role is to be the officiant and arbitrator of the game, and to kind of keep things moving. Like I said, at the end of it all, the bottom line is that we're all trying to tell an interesting story. And we do that better by working as a team rather than working in opposition.
Yeah, and also at the end of the day, GMs, like Emmerron said, play dirty. Don't be an ass.
Yeah.
But, use underhanded tactics. Know the enemy you're playing as.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't be afraid to, if the space that they're playing in is unstable, for example, maybe the enemy in front of them isn't particularly hard, but the moment that their environmental kind of surrounds are maybe unstable, maybe dropping a building on top of them is not uncalled for. Maybe dropping, part of the room away suddenly is not uncalled for. We've had plenty of cases where I've run into things that were not maybe insta kills, but they would be close under most contexts. And like, that is another way to get around some of these things, is like, not everything can be dodged, right? If a whole building is coming down, no amount of dodging is going to get you out from under that big building if you're in the middle of it.
Well, I have got 2 questions though for Q&A if we're ready for Q&A, but I think you're right. And like I even mentioned, there are multiple ways to get to the same solution in Cyberpunk. That there is no one wrong choice or one right choice that is like, this is the one and only way you play Cyberpunk. Because let's say it was martial arts, we might as well just be doing a Jackie Chan movie or something like that.
Honestly, but then you just turn the game into John Wick. I mean, and that equalizes the playing field like that. Because that ultimately is the way you balance things. Is if a fixer knows you're good at something, they're going to put you on jobs that thing is good at solving. But it also means that if you are dangerous, they're going to put you against things that are equally dangerous. That if they know you're capable of it, they're not going to waste, like I said, a fixer is not going to waste their best people on anything they don't think is deserving of it. The moment you prove you are one of their best people for solving a particular problem, you're always going to be the one they call to solve that. And that comes with like I said, a slightly shorter life expectancy that is maybe not measured in years anymore, but in months. And that is where this kind of all boils in, where the law of averages will work against you. The gigs you're taking are more dangerous than your average, edge runner would typically find. And you are going to be that guy solving those problems or dying trying. One of the two, So it's very much like GMs, don't be afraid to kind of call your players bluff that way. And don't be afraid of what you might do to the other people at the table necessarily. Because if you're playing against a particular player's strengths and you're designing your combats to deal with that one person, could be that one person is the vendetta, right? In other words, the enemies just have it out for them. The moment he's down, unless the other players really want to keep the thing going, the enemy force might just be like, well, now that that's done, we're out of here. See you guys later. Sorry for your loss. And they'll just like walk off. Because they don't care about the rest of the party if they're that small potatoes. If the difference is like a gulf between them that way, you're not really going to see them care as much about the other people that are on the table, you know?
Oh, all right. So, I suppose as we are winding down tonight's episode, I have received 2 questions, and I've thrown them on the Q&A, the Q&A paper, the doc. I'm trying here. I've been going for like what, 6 hours?
You've been busy.
Anyway, yeah, I gotta earn them Bezos bucks, you know.
I do.
All right, so are you ready for the first question?
Yes.
I need to update my topic text as well. Also, if you guys have some questions, throw them in there. We'll put them on the document. First question. What would a gold coin currency like a John Wick get you in Cyberpunk?
Depends who's issuing it. The gold coin currency in John Wick is... They've said it repeatedly. It is not a coin with a specific monetary value, although I'm sure, you know, whatever it's made of has a monetary value if you were to break it down. But it's more about what they call the commerce of relationships. In other words, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You know, I earn a couple of coins doing this thing for that person, you know, doing a favor for my fixer, doing whatever. So unless there's like an established network that uses that currency, it really would depend who's handing that chip over to the players.
I actually watched a short video video essay on this. Those coins, and I actually, now that I think about it, it might not be a bad thing to actually throw into my Cyberpunk games. So I'll have to find a way to introduce it in a very fair way of doing it. Like, yeah, they do represent favors, but it's also a resource that gives you access to specific services. And, you know, if you're on the end, you can get access to that stuff. But as soon as you run out of those coins, you're out. You have to start doing stuff to get those coins again.
Yep.
And, yeah, Eraser, yeah, the whole point of the Continental, where they can be safe from the consequences of their actions, and business cannot be done on, you know, the grounds. But, like, you know, let's say, for example, you're part of an exclusive, you know, mercenary club that happens to be, you know, tucked away in Little Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And they use these coins. And this place provides you, you know, a safe place to sleep, provides you a top-of-the-line gunsmith, you know, top-of-the-line care. But as soon as you run out of those coins, because you've ended up squandering them all on resources, favors, other stuff like that, now you gotta figure out how to get back on the end of it. You gotta get coins from someone else. That's my one thought on it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that that's wrong. I think that when you brought up the bar that accepts bullets as currency, that's by and large the same idea. It's you're buying favors or access or things like that that you wouldn't have without those currencies or that kind of reputation, right? That is what you are ultimately dealing with those coins. So yeah, like those gold coins can buy you just about anything, provided that the people you're dealing with take them. That's the really tricky thing.
And if you stumble across one of these gold coin, or like if you happen to stumble across this coin as a rank 4 edge runner, 0 rep, and you have to figure out where to take this thing, you might not have the same amount of access as someone else might with those same coins.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of my answer to that. Is it's a script-based currency that largely comes down to your relationship to the underground, and the people who accept them kind of determine their value.
And then also, second one, what does the Hollow and Hard Dive have as facilities? I saw it mentioned in Pay to Win and on Diamond's channel. Can we get supplements? So, I think the easier one of the two to start off with, Hard Dive.
Yeah.
That's your brainchild, so I'll leave you with that one here.
Hard Dive is not really a club, it's a net cafe. So it's they're a business. They're not really a front or anything. They're a small net cafe of nerds that just want to have a nice place for other nerds to come and play their games and make their money doing that and providing that third space for the people that need it. I think that is honestly, because as someone who had a good home life and stuff growing up, I used third spaces like that a lot still when I was like a teenager, just to get out of the house and to go spend time doing this thing with my friends in a space that's designed for it, and making that more of a thing that we were going out to do intentionally, rather than sitting down at the computer that I always would sit at and like log into the game. And to be quite fair, at the time that I was doing that, services like Discord and even Skype weren't really what they are today, where like you can just do that and you have a bunch of like digital third spaces in a weird way that kind of are the same thing but really kind of aren't. In those times, like Ventrilo and stuff was still kind of, in TeamSpeak were still like kind of the de factos, and you had to rent those servers individually instead of being granted access to them for free. So it's very much like, with regard to that, it's very much a case that like I wanted to emulate that, because it's not entirely, Night City is not entirely divorced of that idea that like you need third spaces, you need spaces to belong, right? That's why clubs are such a big thing. That's why going to spaces like the Afterlife carry a certain level of prestige to them, because that is a third space that only the best of the best get invited to, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I invited Hard Dive. They don't really have any services beyond like offering you a booth to play your games in privacy for whatever time you're paying for. That's pretty much what they are. They have like a vendit that you can buy, you know, snacks, drinks, things like that out of, but it's pretty some very low level thing. It was only really intended ever to be a set piece, a location that you went to because of the way it was used by the people that went there, not at all anything deeper than that.
Yeah. Now the Hollow, on the other hand, it's starting to develop into something a little bit bigger than I originally had it. It was a throwaway club at once that it's just like, yeah, a bunch of fucking nerds go here because they're a bunch of ELO enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. And then we started painting some more to it. And, well, after, working with Emmerron on it, of course, there's the Draglin drones. I'm proud of those. I love that. They're cleanup drones. Like, what are they? Transporters that have like what incendiary shotguns on them, or what are they?
They had, I think I gave them very heavy pistols. I'll pull up Pay to Win right now to check, but yeah. Basically, they're there to serve double duty. They're there to, most of the time, clean up the messes left behind by people because, it's cheaper to run a drone than it is to pay someone. So the drones fly around, they pick up, leftover like little cups or cans or plates and ferry them over to a little port where they'll be taken over to a kitchen where they can be cleaned. Haven't quite decided if that is a one run on more automation or if there really are people back there. But for my part of it, when I was kind of realizing that Hollow for my purposes, I looked at this is a thing that puts drones in a very natural way with the space where players wouldn't think anything of them. And then surprise, they have guns when things start getting out of hand. So it very much turns into the players getting a little bit of atmosphere and then a little bit of a challenge off of that atmosphere. Because there's another gig that Artel made that's a scream sheet called The Big Break, where they do something kind of similar to that, and I was pretty inspired by that. So I that's kind of where I got my idea from.
Yeah. I think it's the one that I'm thinking of. Oh yeah, I remember The Big Break.
The cartoons.
Yeah, the cartoons. Happy, smiley cartoons.
Yeah.
Other things that are included in there, of course, a bunch of nerds go here. They're gonna need somewhere to play Elflines Online, the TCG, or whatever these fucking nerds do. So there is that section of the bar where it's water only. Nothing else goes past there to preserve the sanctity of these little plastic cards that somehow some of them are worth a lot.
Hey, that's important.
Are worth an entire meal.
That is very important.
Yeah. Also, like general tables that your friends might meet at, maybe your elf line. A couple other like closed off spaces that are much more. You rent this for your elf line to meet at quietly. There is an arcade area. A lot of old Segatari cabinets in there. Mind you, this bar is not ran by Segatari. A few screens, of course, to watch the latest streamers doing their thing on Elflines. And then, of course, at the front door, inspired by when I was watching Emmerron play Card Shop Simulator. It's a repurpose from the Night City Guide to Holiday Shopping. Basically, it's this frame that you walk through, and it determines, based on what levels of certain, what you're giving off, if you've washed your ass or not. It is shower in a can ultra. You walk through there, if you stank, you get sprayed. Before you continue there.
And yeah, I've just confirmed the Draglin drones are just large air drones with very heavy pistols and observation cameras. They've also been tech upgraded with basic hologram projectors to make them look like the Draglins.
And then, of course, last but not least, I've my latest edition. There's a fixer present who she's known as a money changer. Will change your Elfline's gold into cold hard cash because, well, her night market is on Elflines Online, and one of my groups this past Wednesday, got to play test one of the adventures. I'm kind of getting together for something that we've kind of joked about a little bit. Now, in the matter of supplements, we'll see. I'll leave it at that. We'll see. We'll think about it.
Yeah, the ELO Underground supplement could happen. It's just a matter of because there's other ideas and stuff like that I'm working on. I'm working on a small, not small project that maybe turns into an entire campaign book thing. And we'll see.
I'm also working on the marijuana campaign as well, so we'll get there. I'm gonna need to do some method acting here pretty soon. Anyway.
Some research, subject matter research.
Subject matter research, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think on that note, I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, no. I know we started a little late today, but we're wrapping just a little bit early. Based on timelines here. Let me see here. Oh, there are some questions from LCC. Hold up. Regarding countering OP strategies, how do you handle NPCs having unique or tech upgraded gear that's specifically meant to do so? When you do the explanation, this NPC is using a homebrew item or tee up that does this thing. How do you keep that reasonable? Do you only do it for like important name bosses, or give the players ability to find out about them before they encounter the person using it? So, be interested to hear how Diamond approaches this. For my part of this, I usually look at that as when I'm making my mooks, if I think that they deserve something like that. One, I usually don't make tee-ups solely to counter my players. Most of the time, I make tee-ups because they add interesting fight mechanics. That is one way to elevate off of the lowest common denominator of a firefight, is like make it more interesting by making it a problem the players now have to solve against in real time. And like maybe some of their skills are going to be good at doing that, maybe they won't be. But the reality is tee-ups just happen. And we see that in Danger God Dossier. You don't need to give the players, I think, a heads up that something is tee-upped necessarily. However, if it's really obvious, like the gun has like a way expanded capacity, for example, they're going to notice the super chunky box mag hanging off the side of it or something, right? And there are other ways that I might roll into perception or deduction checks that link them into knowing a little more about like what are they doing. But I usually just drop it on them as a surprise and then watch them adapt in real time. That's usually the way that I equate to it. If you want to ensure that this won't be a massive issue at the table, you can always bring it up in session 0. That's it, just let your players know. So this is a reminder that any roll abilities or skills you have can be used by NPCs against you. This includes things like tech invention. So if ever you are encountering something and you're like, well, it doesn't work that way in the book, understand very well that it could just be I've tech invented something, and we'll talk about it in the aftermath when you have the chance to look at the item in question. Because there's plenty of NPCs that don't operate based on standard rules. And I think we've gotten enough variety now that players shouldn't expect it to always go like they're imagining. Because unless you're like Diamond and have an encyclopedic knowledge of every item that's come out, you could be throwing something at them from 12 Days of Cutie-ness, and they're going to be caught off guard by it because they just haven't read the DLC.
All right. Well, if the players have it, you have it. When it comes to inventing strange things, I will sit down and look at, okay, what items already exist in the game that could meet this purpose? If not, I always kind of sit down and think, all right, what's the, for example, armor. For me, I love adding weird shit to armor. And also for me, like one of my house rules with armor, you can tech upgrade like heavy like the -2 armors to have no penalty, and the -4 armors to have a -2 penalty. That's a personal thing at my table, just because of like how much how much time you have to sink into what you're working on for each item.
How do you handle -3 armor now?
Light armor. Ooh, actually, light metal gear. That's a. I just take that down to -1.
Fair. Okay. Yeah.
And then of course, just have a reflex coprocessor if you still need to dodge bullets.
Yeah.
Or take some. But like, also if you're wearing heavy armor. Also, if you're wearing heavy armor, it's kind of expected you're not going to dodge bullets, but they're going to bounce off you.
Yeah. Heavy armor builds. Your dodging is not the thing you're supposed to be doing with those.
I had one during my Hope Reborn campaign. She was terrifying. These Red Chrome Legionnaires had no idea what was behind the door when they came in, and they started shooting, and they kept bouncing off. Like, this ain't working. They had, and then shotgun shells. Great time.
All
Loved it.
A video game that I enjoy playing sometimes, and now that she's been living with me, Diamond has seen this a few times, where even before stream today, I was playing The Division 2, and there's these things called tanks. I think that's the proper game term for them. Most of us in the community call them chungas, and what they are these big, beefy, flacked up dudes with giant, like, they look like they're off a bomb squad basically, and usually they're wielding some combination of either a chain gun or a grenade launcher or something.
Cleaners with their fucking flamethrowers.
Oh yeah, those are their own thing. That's their own thing. These guys are, yeah, very much, but you're right, there are some outcast chungas in Division 2 that very much are that way. But they're heavy armor, and literally you cannot kill them until you break their armor. That is the mechanic with them. So you have to zip through their armor as quick as you can. Pray to God they don't have someone in their backline also healing them, because on like the hardest difficulties that happens, and then it's zero fun.
They just patch armor. Oh
yeah, they've got, we call them healing boxes, because some of the infantry will just drop them on the ground, or like the medics will drop them on the ground, and they just provide a zone. And as long as they're in that zone, this thing is throwing out healing nanites onto them. So like,
oh my goodness,
you basically have to out DPS them or find an angle on the box to destroy it before you can attack them. We had one where we were going through a section, and it was like, there were like 4 chungas, and they had like 3 healing boxes in the back line. And the entire field between us and them was effectively a no man's land. And like, it took 3 of the 4 of us, like, pinning down enough of the enemy forces that our tank could work their way around slowly, flank them, and then blast the healing boxes before we could DPS them down. But this is what I mean. Like, you can learn stuff from other games and apply it to Cyberpunk and realize exactly how not OP certain things are.
And of course, like, I'm trying to think, like, and also I like to also upgrade, like, invent other weird gadgets that just happen to do things. Like, one of my favorite things, I call it the Scab Claymore. It doesn't do as much damage as an armor piercing grenade. It requires a DV-17 perception check to notice this thing. If you fail the check while you're passing through the door, you take 5d6 armor piercing damage and get the foreign object critical injury. So, yeah, I mean, you just gotta, watch your feet. Don't kick over lines that you see.
Fair enough. Yeah, but techs, especially scav techs, come up with some jank ass shit. I don't warn my players. They just get to find out what weird shit I cooked that week. Like,
and if the players ask, just talk about it. Like,
we can talk.
As far as I'm concerned, you get to play with your stuff like how they get to play with their stuff.
Yeah, and that's where, like, in the post-mortem, I'll tell them everything. Like, I have no problem sharing exactly what happened with my players in the post-mortem. I just, like, you need to go through it first. That's my only condition. Once you've gotten through it, I will explain exactly how my logic worked with it. Like, and I believe transparency at the table has its place, right? But it's usually in the check-in after and not in the fore, unless the transparency has to do with things like safety.
Lines and veils.
Yeah.
Yep.
Safety tools are the place where transparency exists in the foreground. As long as you're not violating those, though, everything else can wait for the after. And if players really do think it's unfair, they can tell you in that after session. That's why I do check-ins, because I believe in maintaining as much as I can the fun of the game, right? And if players aren't having fun because of how I'm arbitrating something or how I'm approaching something or whatever, right? All of that is stuff that we can modify long-term with those check-ins. But yeah.
So, I don't know if I don't have any more questions, and I think I'm good here. What about you?
No, I think we're good. So guys, as I said at the start of my half of today's episode, if you are watching us over on YouTube, definitely check out Diamond's half of the episode below. Again, we talked about currencies other than the Eddy, and what those look like, how favors work, the economy of relationships as it applies to Night City. After watching John Wick 1, 2, and 3 with her in the span of 2 nights, she felt particularly inspired by this. And we got some more topics coming up now that she has seen one of the best bits of cyberpunk fiction, in my humble opinion, that have come out of the last 10 or 15 years. Nearly 20 years, because the first one came out that long ago. But that said, guys, I hope all of you have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon wherever you're in the world. Stay healthy, stay safe, and until next time, peace, guys. We will see you very soon.
Bye.